Okay.
Oh, we're live. Yay, we're live. Okay, yeah. So, hi everyone, it's Gloria. Hester here. I'm here with my friend Peggy, and we're going to work with her horse Sterling today. And so, but we started today working with ourselves a little bit. So, we were working with the muscles involving trunk rotation and a lot of muscles in our hands, our arms, and our shoulders and neck a lot. And so, do you want to talk a little bit about why we were doing that, Peggy? Okay.
Yeah. Well, first we always try to get our mind in the right state before we head to the barn so that we don't cause any additional tension in the barn when we get out there. And two, because I was feeling some tightness through my neck and shoulder and down into my arm from a previous injury. And something we were doing was helping relax those muscles and let my brain, retrain my brain to let go of those muscles so they won't be so tight.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll say it again because I don't think that could ever be said enough. So it's literally helping your brain relearn so that you're not chronically holding certain muscles tight from previous accidents, injuries, habituations. And so a lot of us, we're at computers and things like that, and just different things, or even the way you're working with your horse, you will develop habituations in your body that, believe it or not, those habituations can create habituations for your horse. And not all of those are, really helpful for your horse or helpful for you. But in this case, if we've had an injury, we're certainly going to be guarding and protecting even after the injury has healed. So, but even if there hasn't, been a previous injury, I love to start with that, because when we come to be with a horse, if we've done our own practices and our own work, we're not as likely to bring a lot of involuntary or unconscious holding patterns in our somas. And so soma is the Latin word for body, and it means it's an intelligent body, and it's a body that knows how to self-correct. And so in our somas, when we come to our horses aren't having to deal with our involuntary, too much tonicity in the muscles, really is what it really is. But so you want to have just enough tonicity for the activity that's being asked of you or required of you. So that's really where an art form, even in the field of yoga or any sort of mindful movement, that's part of it, is training your nervous system to recognize how much effort you might need to use, or how little effort, so that there's not too much engagement there. And that's what you might call finesse. I think some people would call it finesse. And in the case of the way Peggy and I were working, it's like, okay, what are you noticing now in this area from where you'd had this injury? And I think, had it occurred when someone was setting off fireworks and your mare was
It was the week before. Yeah, the week before 4th of July, and people were starting to set off fireworks. So, and she went by, and those hooves came up on her blind side because she is blind in her right eye, and she just didn't have the depth perception to know how close she was to me. Yeah. And so she did contact with my left forearm. And so even here we are over a year later, and I still have some of those habituations of tightness through my arm that sometimes I'm not aware of. And then when I am able to bring my awareness to it, I'm able, through the somatic movements, to get my brain to let go.
So it releases,
yeah,
right?
And it releases, yeah. And so I think any of us who are in this field or doing this work, we've had our experiences of that. And so if you're not familiar with these principles, you wouldn't know that a lot of the things you may be walking around with all the time, you don't have to walk around with those things. So, but you just have to learn how to get your brain to release. It could be a really quick protective mode that brings someone into a pattern, and absolutely same is true for the horses. And so then it literally has to be unlearned. But the good thing is that the principles really are so helpful for every area of your life. It's not just one area. So that's the beauty of it. And Well, and something I do have to remind myself is I have to thank my body for that response, because it's trying to take care of me. It's trying to protect me by holding that tension and that trauma pattern, basically.
And I didn't even think about it till we were just talking about it right now. But it has been worse the last couple of weeks. And what did we just go through? We just went through 4th of July, which was likely triggering for my nervous system, as well as Cammie's, which thankfully,
her horse.
We thankfully had a much, I guess, it was more pleasant than the previous year. Still tough, but we did. But I hadn't even connected the dots that I likely am holding that pattern more these last couple of weeks because of that.
Yes, that's so true. And I know you've done a lot of work to prepare for 4th of July with Cammie and with yourself and what they wanted to have on hand for her, because those noises startle her quite a bit. And so we had talked about some of that too. But you're right, I hadn't thought about the stimulus. And it's funny because I just see Cammie coming around from the barn, kicking around. And she's yawning. But how a stimulus in our environment or even an anticipation of it will start to recreate that pattern or put that pattern back. So that's such a good point. And I've been doing a lot lately with, deepening the conversation around our nervous systems, different parts of our brains, how we relate not only from human to human, but also from human to horse and horse to human. And it's getting really fascinating and it's really a lot of fun. So
and one of the things we were talking about before we started going live was in horses and in people, which we just experienced during our practice, was the disconnect when we were trying to flatten my lower back, but my upper back was trying to take over. And so by redirecting my awareness, not realizing that my upper back was becoming tight. And then once you finally get that, bring my awareness down to my hips and my pelvis and my lower back, and finally, there it is. And it's for the horses too, which is something we're going to work with Sterling today, because he's stuck in this compensating pattern where he's holding his muscles really quite oddly.
So we'll get to see.
So we'll hopefully get some video of him moving today and letting those muscles relax. And retraining the brain to that normal, I don't want to say normal movement pattern, but a more comfortable movement pattern.
I like to say a functional pattern.
Okay.
And that way, because what's functional for that being and what feels easy for that being and comfortable, that is the functional pattern. And with more connections and more education, it just becomes more and more easeful. It looks like what you might call graceful, and it certainly feels graceful. So some people call it a somatic glide, that kind of thing. But it's so true what Peggy was just talking about. If we recruit certain muscle groups out of sequential order or recruit muscle groups, our brain does that involuntarily, and it'll recruit a muscle group that's not the ideal functional way to move. And so those habits can be brought about by an injury, just like what happened last year. So that can kind of set those patterns in motion. But before we decided to go live, we were talking about some clicker training, and that's why I said that would be so fun to talk about that today. So do you want to talk about
so clicker training is something that is, relatively new to me. My mare and I started a course last summer, and just because we needed some ways to get some things done medically, and traditional training methods weren't really working, and so I was up for anything, and she loves food.
She loves food, so she's motivated.
But surprisingly, actually, clicker training has made her less food motivated. It's made her have a healthier relationship around food, where she's not, trying to eat your whole hand when it comes towards her. But the thing we were talking about was having a start of session signal, whether it's for clicker training or for doing a somatic session. So for people who don't know what a start of session signal is, before you start any clicker training, you want to have a designated point that lets the horse know, okay, we're going into training mode. which doing that prevents them from throwing behaviors at you all the time when they're not in a training session. So for Cammie, hers is currently just a bucket on a cone. When that bucket goes on that cone, she knows that it's time to start training. But thankfully, a dear friend of mine has made this beautiful necklace for me that has a nice little tassel at the end, and I can't wait to get it. And that's going to become our start of session signal. So I'm really looking forward to that. But for Sterling, the reason we kind of got on to that point is he's not really a fan of me working with him somatically. A lot of times he'll leave, or just it's not comfortable for him, which is counterproductive. And so Gloria had mentioned possibly having a start signal for him that, hey, when I wear this hat or wear this necklace, or, you know, have whatever this start of session signal is, then he knows, okay, I'm ready to go into this mode and start relaxing.
Yes. Yeah, it's just a little cue, a little visual cue, or something in Sterling's environment, and it's a reminder for Peggy as well as Sterling that they are in a somatic mode now, and that they're not clicker training.
No.
So one of the main differences between working with the horse somatically or doing clicker training with the horse. When you're working with a horse somatically, you can't use food as a reward because it will elicit an excitatory response. And you don't want that. You want the horse to be receiving their own feedback from within their nervous system. And if they're excited about food, they won't get that feedback. And so, but with clicker training, it's the reward to, move them forward, really. So it's very different. And so it's great for us to think about what our intention is, and it's very precise about where you're putting your awareness when you're working with your horse. Your horse absolutely is picking up on that, and it's a good reminder for us when we're asking for a movement where we would like for that horse's awareness to be within their own body, because that too will help your horse organize their own pattern. And the beautiful thing about this is you get to feel that in your own body first. So that's some of what we were doing before we started the live. So.
Well, and in comparison too, so with clicker training, the food reward is the reinforcer. But for somatic practice, really the reinforcer is when the horse makes those neuronal connections and feels the release. And I don't know if this is true, so you tell me or not, but is that why we sometimes see them do the practices on their own after the fact? So it's become a natural reinforcer to set their muscles back to neutral.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, it's the practice itself is their own reward. So, and because it's educational and they get to experience repetitions and things like that, it feels good. They know how it feels, and so they're learning how to self-correct. So, for us as humans, like I was saying, I was thinking about some of these different aspects of the nervous system that I bring inside to client work and group work and all of this. And one of the things is that our nervous system, if we know that we're going to do something challenging, whatever is challenging for us, something that may make us sort of uncomfortable, or it's unfamiliar, it's out of our norm, or maybe it feels a little threatening to us because of past experiences, the best thing we can do is to do something that helps us move more toward ventral in our nervous system. So ventral is where we feel safe, connected, curious. We're more likely to have a sense of humor. And so when we're in that part of our nervous system, before we do the thing that feels a little more challenging or uncertain, then we can go into that from the best possible place, from more of a neutral place. And then after we've done that thing, whatever that is, for some people it could be, I know you work at a dentist, for some people it would be going to the dentist, for some people it could be a first date, for some people it could be, if you show your horses, it could be going into the show ring. Anything where you feel like, the stakes are high, right? So anything where you feel like the stakes are high. And that may be one reason, actually, when you go to work with Sterling somatically, you care about him, you want him to be doing well, and so you may be setting the stakes high.
Yes.
You want, is that?
I think that could be part of it. Yeah, and one of the things we talked about before starting the live was that being his person, I see him every day, I'm looking at him every day, and I probably can become over focused on certain areas that can become uncomfortable to him. There's too much awareness being pointed at, say, that left front hoof that's doing this.
So that pattern or compensation, and so it can be a little close in. So it's to how to create spacious non-attachment in the field. And so it's funny because I see this being so necessary in everyone's life right now, whether for horse or human. That spacious non-attachment is almost like a horse that's had a lot of life experience, and they have maybe their primary person is a kid, and so this horse that's had a lot of life experience has so much patience and spaciousness with their child. And so for humans, that's almost something I think that so much of we have to learn that for ourselves and learn it for others too. In whether it's like your relationship with your horse. I've noticed that these tendencies as I would travel and hold retreats and workshops, and I can think about even some trainers who they just wanted so much certain relationships with their own horse, and so how to help create the spaciousness to get that. And that's one of the first times I really discovered, as far as horses, I would have some people actually ask for a movement hands-on, and then I would ask other people to ask for that movement visually rather than hands-on, because some horses actually respond beautifully to that. They enjoy that. They appreciate the respect of the distance and the autonomy. So I see this as, I see the principles holding true for all kinds of interrelationships. And so,
Well, and I think too, for me personally, making sure I'm going in with no judgments, no expectations of what's going to happen. And we've talked about this on the phone some, about walking into the barn and seeing your horse for where they are right now in this moment, this day. And if that means if I'm coming towards him with too much energy and he's like, no, see you later, okay, I probably need to back up and take care of me first.
Yes, always. Always, yes, yeah, that's definitely one thing about this kind of work. It's really nice. It will help you have the awareness to feel that and to bring that. There was she's a brain science researcher. Her name is Jill Bolte Taylor, and her first book that she authored is called Stroke of Insight. And she talks about, in some of her talks and some of her books, and she's since authored more books, but she talks about when she had a brain injury, she was so very sensitive to what some people would call energy. And she said that when someone would come into the hospital room to see her, although, they thought they were there with good intentions and they thought they were there to be supportive and to help her, she said it made me realize at the time people don't realize the energy they bring into a room. And that she said that's one of the things she took from her own brain injury experience was, she said it would be so great if people could recognize, and realize that be conscious of and responsible for the energy you bring into a room. And that's something we all can feel it. So if you're thinking, oh, why are you talking about energy right now? What are you even talking about? But you may have had this experience where you walk into a room and you can feel like if someone's been arguing in that room, you can feel it. And so most everyone's had that experience. That's usually the kind of opposite of energy you'd want to be in or want to feel, but it is an example of it. And so some people who teach in those terms, you could think about each one of us, we have our own unique energy field that's been created over the span of our experiences. Each one of us have that. And then when we come together, we also have a field that's created too, that's called the relational field or the relationship field. And everything you've ever experienced together in that is in that field, and so it has its own field. And so that also, I mean, we're just, as we're thinking about, like for you and Sterling, you guys have your experiences of what you've always done together. And when I'm with Sterling, I'm always there in that, from that one perspective. I'm not trying to teach Sterling ground manners or trying to teach Sterling.
He's 34.
Anything. He's 34.
He doesn't need any ground manners.
No, he does. He has fantastic ground manners. But just for as an example, like whatever you may be doing, some people in the round pen with their horses.
Right.
So your horse is always wondering, well, what is it
what are we doing? What is it that you're wanting? And so from a somatic perspective, you're really the whole embodiment of it is that the horse realizes, oh, she doesn't have expectations about where I put my foot or where I don't put my hoof, that kind of thing. So they really get all of the feedback rather than it being performative. So for a trainer, someone who's training horses, you know, they're wanting particular movement, for example, and so it can be more about the movement itself, the timing of the movement, the execution of the movement, and less about how it feels for the horse in their own internal sensory motor system, their own feedback. And so somatic education for your horse is giving them a space to really have an immense amount of their inner feedback, because that's what changes the resting length of a muscle. So, yeah.
Well, and I think, too, that's something that with my training, more so with Kimmy, because Sterling, he's retired. He kind of gets to do what he wants. But it is giving them that space, that time to, one, think about what we just did. If it made them a little up, then have the chance to come back down and process that. For Kimmy, right now, that can sometimes take 30 minutes.
Yes.
From one interaction, whether it be, pressure or even reward sometimes. She needs that time and space to come back down. I do think sometimes that's a big thing that's missed. You know, a horse comes up and then we kind of keep them there and never get, the satisfaction of coming back down to relaxation, which is where they process the energy or the information and the energy. And that's one of the most beautiful things about the somatic work is it really helps them learn to release and to come back to that relaxation in their body. So not just in the mind, but physically as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It really does. It gives them the opportunity to do that. And as you said that, there's so many things that just popped into my head about where your horse is going on their autonomic ladder, even where they are on it, as what you just described. And so humans do that as well. You know, when I mentioned earlier, if you have a big challenge and then you don't ever come back down again out of that and find a way, because those are, for most everyone in the times, this, I'd say definitely for the last century, how to come back into a more parasympathetic place, a place of rest and digest. And so for a horse to be given the tools to do that, or for a person to be given the tools to do that, that is what this work is about. And I know not all nervous systems are the same, not all life histories are the same, not all tendencies are the same, whether that's a horse or a human. And so how is it that you can really help someone find what works best for them and what they will actually do and use, and really to be able to connect. We're all designed to connect. When horses are more relaxed and they've come out of some of this, they're able to move forward in life with curiosity rather than tension and apprehension. And that lives in a horse's nervous system. And so I'll just say it again, moving into life with curiosity rather than tension and apprehension, and just being, quite relaxed in your soma. So there are a lot of things you can do to learn that. And I think we'll wrap the live up from here. And I just want to say thank you, Peggy, for talking about sharing what we
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. We have a day ahead of us at the barn. And so if you enjoyed watching this and you'd like to learn more, you can email info@gloriahester.com, and just do that, or you can go to the top of the homepage and sign up for the newsletter, just as a way to stay in touch. But again, feel free to email info@gloriahester.com if you'd like to learn more for you, for your body, your nervous system, your soma, or for your animals' nervous systems and their somas. And I just want to say thank you again for doing the live.
And thank you and all of my herd. So my dogs and cats included. Love Gloria. And Sterling and Kimmy are ready for us. They're in the field waiting.
Yes, they are. So we'll see you all soon. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, feel free to share it, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.